How can you find, fund, and fix planet-sized problems? First, you need to be informed. And that starts here with the Doi Podcast.
Well, you know it does. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. 8/24/22, show number 72, if you're keeping track. Welcome into the most meaningful crypto conversation on the interwebs this evening, and that's because it involves you. This evening, we have got another very special guest. We are going to bring up Terry from Voting Smarter, and we're going to get into a conversation. We're going to do it together. Corey Fico, how are you doing this evening?
I am quite excited about this. This is an idea that I've really found myself passionate about for years, is how can you make influence with your money the same way that you can make influence with your votes and believe, values that matter to you. And I can't say enough how excited I am to bring Terry on and to be talking about this particular subject.
Yeah. Well, Corey, this fits right into the analogy that you like to use about a toaster, right? You can buy one toaster for $1. You can buy one toaster for $1.75. Yes, one might be more expensive, but where is it made? Who is it supporting? What is it doing with the money, right? And really, it comes down to a conscious decision for us. If we're aware of it and we're aware that there is another choice, do we dare to take it?
Yeah, I mean, I sure would make that choice myself.
Yep, no doubt. Well, gang, we're going to skip through the news, and we are going to bring Terry up and get this party started. If you are joining us over on Clapper or you're out there on the Facebooks, we invite you to come over to the Discord. Although you can listen to our voices there, you can come in and interact in here. You can get into the chat with us, and we'll answer questions live. If you have a question, throw it up, and we'd be glad to answer it.
Good evening, Terry. How are you doing?
Good, guys. How are you?
Not too shabby. Excited to have you in here.
Awesome. Yeah, it's I'm out here on the West Coast, so it's still nice and bright out. Beautiful day.
Yeah. So for those,
you don't have to rub it in, Terry.
Corey, were you going to go ahead and build Terry up with a great introduction? Like he's the funniest guy in Web3 right now, voted funniest by Metaverse Dentist.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, Terry, no pressure, but we are expecting you to be absolutely electric. And if we aren't rolling on the floor laughing, then we're all going to be disappointed in you.
All right. Well, I mean, I do feel a little out of place because I have hair. But
low blow, easy, too easy.
Sorry, gentlemen.
Yeah, you do have some glorious hair. I will say that. Yeah,
I appreciate that.
It doesn't. Hey, Terry, really, don't let it go to your head. It doesn't take much to impress us with hair.
Okay. Well, I could hear that. But yeah, no, I'm really excited to be here and talk about what we're doing at Voting Smarter, what sort of our vision for Web3 and politics is, and sort of how we're taking a Web2 nonprofit and trying to move it into Web3.
Yeah, awesome. Well, as we're getting started, do you mind giving us just a little bit of background on yourself and in how you got to where you are today? And maybe the team. Do you have a team that surrounds you? Are you doing it solo? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So again, my name's Terry Crandell. I'm the CEO and founder of Voting Smarter. I'm an economics professor by trade, so usually pretty boring. But what drives me is really trying to solve these really big intractable problems. And I used to always be really mad at politics when I was young. And as I took more economics classes, what you really learn is, people just follow their incentives. And, you can see that all over crypto right now, all over politics right now. And one of the huge incentives that I learned about in grad school was this idea called rational ignorance. And without, getting too boring, because you said I had to be electric, it's this idea that when making a decision, if the cost of making an informed decision is high, but the benefit of making an informed decision versus an uninformed decision is low, people will choose to make uninformed decisions. And so just go on the account Influencers in the Wild if you want to see this in the world. But think of Tinder, for a first date versus getting married. And a few people might go on 90 Day Fiancé, but most people do a bunch of due diligence when picking their spouse because an uninformed decision has a high cost. Whereas if you're a guy, sorry ladies who are listening, guys only swipe in one direction, right? And so on Tinder, you just swipe and swipe. You say yes to everything. It's because it's the law of numbers. And so the cost of making a bad choice is low. And that's what's happening at the ballot box, right? People are, rather than getting super informed and nerdy like maybe I do when it comes to politics and economics, and I'm not to say that I make the right choice at all when it comes to election day, but most people use shortcuts to get informed, and they use shortcuts to make their voting decisions, right? The number one shortcut a normal person uses is party affiliation. Most people are kind of sort of like party X or party Y. And so they'll just go to the ballot. We've all done it. Maybe we've done a little bit of research at the top of the ticket, but then we just go down the rest of the ticket and we're like, we're going to outsource our brain to that political party and vote party lines. We saw this in other elections where people vote by race, people vote by gender, people vote by sexual identity. And immutable characteristics are not a predictor of performance. They're not the proper way to evaluate people for office. And so we, instead of getting pissed off that most people don't read an hour of news every day and watch a couple hours of news every day and understand the differences in the nuances of Social Security policy, we decided, well, let's lower the cost of information. So that's really our founding principle, is let's lower the cost of information so people can make more informed decisions because they don't have the time or energy to do it on their own. And so in 2020, we built our dating app for elections. Think Tinder meets Bagel. Think like politics and Tinder put together. So we took Cards Against Humanity. We wrote some statements like we should build a wall at the southern border or abortion should be legal, right? We took left-leaning statements, right-leaning statements, and you could swipe right if you agreed. You could swipe left if you disagreed. If you loved an idea, you could swipe up. And if you hated an idea, you could swipe down. And in an average of 5 minutes and 5 seconds, nearly 4,000 people found who they matched with on the issues for who was running for House, Senate, governor, and president. We had done all the research in-house. We had nearly 100 researchers all volunteering for us, combing through candidate websites, combing through other resources and voting records. And we created basically these dating profiles for every candidate. And it was somewhat successful, but the truth is 2020 was the least undecided election in human history. And the only way to really make money on elections is by selling data. And we don't want to betray the trust of our users. And so there's a lot of time in between elections, and we started to think, how can we use our data to affect change every day, not just on election day? And so one of the other big things we wanted to attack was the amount of money in politics. And if we could wave a magic wand and stop, the donations that take place, the lobbying that take place, the dark money in politics, we would. But the Supreme Court says all that's legal. So we thought, well, how can we use the market to put pressure on those who make these substantial donations, many of which are corporations? And how can we do that? Well, we can do that through collective action, right? By making information cheaper for people like you, Phil, and Corey, and everybody listening. And so we took a bunch of donation data from companies, big brands, because we started big thinking they're the ones who buy the most influence. And we have about 120 brands so far that we have their donation data from. And we take that donation data and we mix it with the candidate data, where they stand on abortion, where they stand on gun rights, where they stand on diversity, where they stand on immigration. And we have an algorithm that basically says that every dollar that Amazon spends on Ted Cruz means this, every dollar they spend on AOC means that, and what's the net, right? So Amazon leans this way or that way. And we built a browser extension. So I don't know if either of you have either of you ever used Honey or Rakuten or one of those shopping extensions?
I have not. I don't do much shopping online except through eBay and Amazon.
Yeah. Well, Amazon has its own version that we're working on right now. But so there's these websites, and one's called Rakuten. It used to be called Ebates, and it was bought by Rakuten. I think, well, with the pandemic, time's weird, but I think it was 12 years ago. For $1 billion. And what they did is they said, okay, for every link that we have that's an affiliate link, maybe we make anywhere from 2 to 14% of what you buy. And they'll split that with their user and give them cash back. And so they formed these affiliate groups with Macy's and these big brands. And so people go there to get cash back on their purchases. Honey was, I think, started in a dorm room where people were trying to find the best coupon code for pizza. And so they built this thing that would scrape the internet to automatically populate the best coupon code for pizza. And it grew into this huge thing that now scrapes coupon codes for everything, for thousands of companies, so you can get the best discount when you're shopping. So people use these things to find deals and whatnot. And there's other ones that are issue-based as well. It's kind of a really interesting space. And so what we did is you set up your account, you answer 14 questions, and we have a baseline political profile for each user. And then we compare that baseline political profile to all the big brands that we have data on, right? So the Walmarts, the Amazons, the Marriotts, the Delta Airlines of the world. And we tell you your percentage match with those companies. And then we show you other companies in that industry that you match with as well, maybe better, maybe worse. And so, because what happened, so I grew up, I call this idea the single mom super PAC. And it's because I grew up in a very political household with very little money. And every time my mom bought Johnson & Johnson baby shampoo, so I had no more tears, some of that money went to politicians. Every time we bought Stouffer's macaroni and cheese dinner, some of that money went to politicians. But we didn't know what politicians it went to, and we didn't know if it was funding the world that we would want to see. And so that's what we're trying to do. Just like we did with candidates, trying to lower that cost of information, we try and show individuals where their money's going and what issues it's funding. So because corporations can't buy politicians without our money. And most corporate interests aren't aligned with our interests. And so what we're hoping is, because we can't wave our magic wand and stop this sort of expenditures on companies, because I don't fault corporations. It's legal and it's very, very useful. They're just following their incentives. And politicians, same thing. I want to be mad at them. I want to call them corrupt. But if you have to spend 18 months of a 2-year congressional term raising $5 million to win re-election, that's what you're going to do. You're not going to work hard for your constituents. You're going to work hard to stay there. And you're going to rationalize that, well, I can't do anything for my constituents if I'm back home. And so I don't know how much you guys know about money in politics. The more we study this, the more we dig in, the more shocked we are. When I worked in D.C., I was an intern at the time, and we were in a meeting up in the Hill, and it was about the Farm Bill, right? So there's this big, giant bill every year that the USDA, where I works on, and it has millions and millions of dollars of subsidies, millions, if not billions of dollars worth of tax policies, all this stuff. And, being the nerdy economist I was, when it was Q&A time, I said, how many economists do you have working on the Farm Bill? right, which has billions and billions of dollars worth of impact on the economy. And I think it was Steny Hoyer's chief of staff running this meeting, because I think he was the majority leader in the committee at the time. And he said, well, we share Bob with Ways and Means. So they had half an economist working on economic policy. But then he followed up with, but don't worry about it, right? Because the corn lobby has a whole floor of economists that vet the numbers, and the sugar lobby has 2 floors to raise the money just to buy your seat from the party you're in.
Wow. So what you're saying is you get into office and then have to buy your seat.
Correct. If you want to be on a committee, you got to pay for it. And if you want to be the chairperson of a committee, you could imagine that number is probably 10x.
Oh my gosh.
And so what does that mean? Does that mean that means either only rich people can run and who are willing to spend their own money, or you got to go find other people's money? And if you're Bernie Sanders, maybe you can get $1 million $5 donations. But most people aren't Bernie Sanders, right? If you need hundreds of thousands of dollars just to get a seat on a committee, where are you going to get that money? I've never donated to a candidate, and I'm super political. So, and the most one person can donate is $2,500. So you got to go find, a ton of people willing to make the max donation to you. Or so what happens is you got to go get money. It's not, and the donations aren't to you. Obviously, they're to the Democrat Congressional Committee, the Republican Congressional Committee. So they can donate more than the max. I misspoke there, but so who really donates? People who get something for it.
Yeah.
And
so
then,
you said something,
ahead.
Terry, I want to key in on. You said that there's a max that an individual can donate. Like, how does that, like, where is it that there's a ceiling where you can only donate so much, and then there's another side where there's no ceiling at all?
Yeah. So if you're donating directly to a candidate, I believe for a federal office, I believe the campaign maximum is $2,500 per election cycle, per individual.
So,
go ahead.
what was the purpose of that? Like, whenever somebody, is that to try to protect the individual from overspending out of their budget, or like what is the motivation for capping what an individual can do to a politician?
The FEC, the Federal Elections Commission, and Congress assert that these limits are to protect us from corruption. So instead of me walking in with a briefcase into Congressman Fecco's office and saying, here's $2 million, I need you to pass this so my pharmaceuticals get through the FDA. Right? So, or I get approved for this pipeline, or I get approved for this union to set up, right? So it's supposed to be a blockade against bribery, is my understanding.
And that makes sense. The question is how does it go from that to basically limitless funds? If you would say that money is influence and you want to cap the amount of influence an individual can have, how does one jump across the river to the other side with lobbyists? Where's that jumping?
Yeah. So lobbying is different than campaign donation. But so the lobbying, so let's put a pin in lobbying for a second. And let's stick with donations. So while there's a max I can give to a specific candidate in a specific election, if a independent group sets up what is called a political action committee. So I said the word PAC earlier. So if you don't know what I was talking about when I said PAC, that stands for Political Action Committee. And a political action committee is basically, it can be issue-based, it could be party-based, it could be geographically based, it could be even individual. Like Elizabeth Warren for president is, I believe, the name of a PAC, a political action committee. Now, a political campaign, so Elizabeth Warren and her campaign staff cannot call Elizabeth Warren for America PAC. They're not allowed to coordinate. Does that make sense?
So what you're saying is one PAC can't coordinate with another PAC. Is that what I'm understanding?
PACs can coordinate all they want, but you're not supposed to talk directly to the candidate because essentially that would be like getting rid of the donation limit. But there's a lot of people who work on the staff who go back and forth. It's assumed by most that there is rampant coordination between PACs, super PACs, and candidates. Right? And so some PACs are required, and I may get some of this wrong, excuse me if I do, but PACs are required to report their donations. Then there's super PACs, which are not required to report. And so that's where dark money comes in, where it's completely untracked. And so you could imagine that 2024 is coming. Let's say it's Biden and Trump again. Yay. And a super PAC funded by someone who is very fond of, let's say, guns, would clearly not want Joe Biden to be president a second time, and we want Donald Trump to be president a second time. So they could run ads about guns in states where they thought it would help Donald Trump. And they could run ads that imply that Donald Trump is the right candidate on guns, but not say, go vote for Donald Trump. And that is legal. As long as they don't time it with the campaign on purpose.
So to me, that makes sense on how you'd be able to still do everything you wanted to do with the money, as far as if you're wanting to use money as influence. I guess the question is do you happen to know how they justified it that way? Is it just kind of this, it started off innocent with the donation limit a long time ago, and then it just kind of blended into essentially as PACs and, oh, you're not supposed to coordinate with, say, go vote for this person, and then there's kind of this collusion about, having information, being able to coordinate, and then going to super PACs and it becoming completely dark. Did that all happen at once, or was it this kind of this slow trickle? And if so, I mean, either way, what's the argument for why, if you believe money is influence, that exists?
Yeah, well, that's interesting because I would imagine that if we take Citizens United as a baseline, where money is speech and corporations are people, you would think that campaign donation limits themselves would be illegal, right? You're stifling my speech. Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, if I might add just a little bit of distinction there, that Citizens United actually ruled that they're persons. And there is a very big legal distinction between a people and persons. And I see. And I know that, we like to kind of give, I think in conversation, we try to give cover and almost make sense out of their nonsense. And Corey, you are alluding to, well, how could this happen? Corruption. Like the same people that are making the laws that apply to you and I saying, oh, no, you can't donate more than $2,500. Those same people are making laws for PACs and super PACs, right? So it's like...
And benefiting from the money.
Exactly. It's just corruption through and through.
So one of my professors, his name's Robert Clickguard. He's a world expert on corruption. There's these corruption indices, and America actually isn't that high on these indexes because, and I would argue with him, and I would say, Bob, it's because we've legalized corruption.
Right.
In Brazil, in Indonesia, right, you keep money in your pocket when you get pulled over or when you need to go get something approved to put an addition on your house. You just line the pockets all the way up the ladder, right? Where that's overt corruption. We have exactly the same system here. It's just legalized, and it's legalized in a way that benefits those with gobs of money, not just a tenner, right? And so, you're right on. You're right on, Phil. And
like
Corey,
insider trading, right? Insider trading
correct.
is another perfect example of, for you or I to do it gets us in, for Martha Stewart to do it gets her in jail. But then if you are a senator and you have this information because of your job, I mean, and they will argue, well, we still have a right as people to invest. and it's our job, so we know this information. You can't use that against us. And this is their reasoning. And so they just pass laws that say, oh, these insider rules don't apply to us.
So there's a great podcast I like from the Democracy Group. It's called Swamp Stories. And so a lot of these stories are there. And one is specifically about insider trading. So and Paul Ryan and the Congress in 2016, I believe, passed reforms on this because it really was just outrageous, right? And we saw with the pandemic, 2 Republican senators, I think both from Georgia, made positions that after getting a briefing, they moved some investments. Now they argue their investments were in a blind trust and whatnot. I mean, if you look at Paul Pelosi's portfolio, he bought a bunch of chip stocks right before the Chip Act was passed, right?
Yeah.
If you look at Harry Reid's real estate empire in Nevada while he was Senate Majority Leader and in the Senate for so long, this is blatant insider information access and use.
Yeah.
And it is rules for us that don't apply to them.
That's right.
Just like the Affordable Care Act doesn't apply to them, right? They have a completely separate healthcare. Social Security doesn't apply to them. Mm-hmm. They have a completely separate retirement program.
Vaccine mandates didn't apply to them.
Correct. And so I would get viscerally charged by this hypocrisy and this entrenched corruption. And then I took a breath and I decided, well, this is what they're incentivized to do. Right? And so I can pray that good people run for office, make it through the machine, and change the laws to their detriment. Or I can leave my job as a college professor, making actual money, and start a nonprofit and try and fight this problem with the market. And so this is completely a passion project for me and my team of 22 people. We've had over 140 volunteers over the last 2 years help us do research, help us do marketing, help us design our app and our extension. You know, we're fully committed to trying to help each of you take your political power back. Because the truth is, right now, money is political power.
You said something that...
Yeah, go ahead, Corey.
I was going to say, Terry, you said something I really wanted to key on. That you said that you can pray that somebody good comes in and they want to make positive changes to their own detriment. I feel like that's something a lot of people don't recognize, and you've said it a number of different ways already in this podcast, but to really just like hone in on that, if you're a politician, you require money as fuel in order to get reelected. Can't get money from individuals. All things you've said, just summarizing. You can't get money from individuals at any quantity unless you're basically Bernie Sanders. You get 1 million people to give you $5, which they're just like 0.5% of politicians can sustainably do that, and definitely nothing that isn't at a Senate level. And everyone else is forced to buy their way into that position through campaign ads, or to, at the very minimum, to compete with somebody else who is somehow. And also, too, if they're going to be doing that and aren't already in this system, that means that they be an incumbent. And it makes it to where the political system really, Terry, let me know if I'm misunderstanding this, but it seems like it's all short of impossible to try to change the political system in a way and just snap our fingers and say, oh, it's a politician's fault, they need to be different, because if they were, it doesn't really seem like they would be voted in or they would stay in. Am I understanding this correctly?
I mean, that's how I see it. I think you're dead on. In 2013, 2012, Lawrence Lessig, who had worked in the Clinton Justice Department, had a TED Talk. And if you Google Lawrence Lessig, Lessig, he has, I think, 3 or 4 TED Talks. But this one's called Lester Land, right? So one word, the name Lester, followed by land. And he talks about how there's an election before the election. And we all go, yeah, that's the primary election. True. And only about a third of people vote in the primary election. And it's usually the most partisan of each party. And that's why we end up with the extremes in the general election, which is another problem we want to attack at Voting Smarter. But there's even an election before the primary, and it's the money election. And the money election is exactly what what you were talking about. You have to raise a war chest to win the ad wars. You have to send out enough mailers and have enough TV ads and make enough phone calls and knock on enough doors just to get on the ballot to represent your party in the primary. And if you look at who donates, even that $2,500 max, it was 0.00, I'm going to get this wrong, 7% of the population. It was the 1% of the 1% were the ones making the max donations, getting the access. So why do you think when you look around the world and everything's organized for the 1% of the 1%, why do you think that is?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And again, do I fault them? Look, I'm a high integrity guy, and I wish everybody else was too. But human nature is to, especially in today's society, is to do you. And so I disincentivize my kids from being jerks by punishment, not just by telling them to be good people. And so we follow our incentives. Think about, I talk about this a lot in my classes, right? When you go to work, if you work for somebody else, the truth is your goal is to go to work and go home with doing the least amount of work possible. That makes your job, makes your boss happy, keeps your pay going up, but your job, you're really trying to do the least amount possible. But if you own the business, right? I don't know if you guys have seen those Instagrams and those TikToks, right? I was tired of working 9 to 5, so I started my own business, and now I work 24/7. I mean,
yes. I know that.
I mean, it's the God honest truth. I'll tell you that. And so we just do what we're incentivized to do. We're human, and so. Do I get pissed still? Yes. But the truth is, it's the incentives that have to change, and then the people change. And the problems is, and this is where I can, for everybody tuning in for a Web3 podcast, they're like, mother effer, where's the Web3? This is where the Web3 comes in, right? So for those of you who don't know, there's this thing called a collective action problem. Think about the plastic straw problem, right? If we all decided to not use plastic straws, it wouldn't be a problem. And honestly, most of the plastic straws are not coming from North America, but that's okay. We can talk about that separately. If we all work together to solve problems, we can. But we like plastic straws. So if everybody around you isn't going to use a plastic straw, you're going to free ride on the group. You're going to be like, well, my neighbors aren't using plastic straws. My kids, okay, I'm going to use my plastic straw because you're self-interested. And so these groups break down if we don't have some sort of contract with each other. And that's why the government thinks it should step in and ban plastic straws here in California. And the same is true with these elections. Look, go ahead.
And the way they'll do it, though, is they'll ban plastic straws. They'll make you paper straws wrapped in plastic. It's.
I didn't say they do it efficiently. I just said they're going to do it. That is such a great point. And I think so. What I think is different about Web3 than other Web2 products, Web2 elections, just how you even going on Amazon and shopping or watching Netflix on your phone, is there's been this word from the beginning that I've heard in every Twitter space, that I've heard in every AMA and Discord, and it's community. And what I'm seeing here is, yeah, degens and all that stuff, but what I'm seeing here is there really is a collective. I mean, there's all these people who think, owning a JPEG of a monkey is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's only worth hundreds of thousands of dollars because other people in that collective will pay it. And Web3 is finding a way to pull people in to their screens far more than Web2. And so that's why Voting Smarter is moving to Web3. So for those of you that don't know, we're launching an NFT in October. It's sort of, cartoony versions of people from history with funny eyes and hats. And we're using the money from that sale to start construction on a space in the metaverse where you can have safe political conversations. And by safe, I mean it's not like a group of Proud Boys running up on a group of Antifa in the middle of the street.
Well, at least if you're in the metaverse, you're not going to really get hurt. Just your feelings.
Exactly. 100%. And look, we've even thought of that. I'm the kind of person who wants to know there's a booger in my nose or that I'm wrong about something if you have evidence, but not everybody does. And so the way we've envisioned our metaverse is it's actually, there'll be like a giant piece of duct tape down the middle of the space. Like if you had a sibling and you were fighting over your bedroom. And on one side of that duct tape is a curated, moderated experience. And then a mirror reflection of the community, all the same access to educational videos and conversations with politicians and things like that we want to do. It'll be unmoderated. So if you want a safe space, it'll be there. If you want to walk and just have a free-for-all, it'll be there. And what's cool about the metaverse is you can mute somebody who's saying really dumb or offensive stuff. And that you can't do on the street.
You mean just for you to hear? Like you can mute them individually,
Correct.
You can personally
Correct.
mute people?
Correct.
Oh, I'm turning more to the metaverse every day.
Yeah, I wish they had it for marriage.
Well, you said earlier about dating and getting and your wife and apologizing to the women, but Corey and I don't really understand that because our wives were delivered by angels. So,
They're listening, everyone.
Yes, they're absolutely
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, that'd be a good wasted opportunity, wouldn't it?
Definitely, man. I love this conversation. This to me is a conversation that is going to bring more people into the Web3 space because voting is something that is we're at least conscious of it, right? And we understand that there's something wrong, and most of us just feel hopeless, to be quite honest with you. I think that's where most people, when they look at the political system that we're in right now and how far out of control it's gotten, they just feel hopeless. Like they feel like, and I believe that the messaging is very, very direct, where people are told, well, the only way you can make a change is revolution. Well, hell, man, I'm trying to take my kids to the movies. I don't have time for a revolution. You know what I'm saying? You hear revolution and you know exactly what it means. It means bloodshed. And so you've got a group of people that are telling us, oh, no, there's no way out. You're trapped. The only way you can get out is through a revolution. And the people are saying, well, we don't want that, right? That's not what we want. And this is something that offers hope. Right? This is something that we can get involved in together and build that collective, and this offers hope. So I love it.
I appreciate that, Phil. And look, I'm a real political guy. I worked for one of the presidential campaigns in 2008. I was president of one of the political clubs in college, right? Like I've always been hyper political.
And know who it is.
What I realized probably in my late 20s is that a lot of it was coming from my insecurity of needing to be right. And I would proselytize or argue all the time because I needed to be validated externally. And as I've gotten older, maybe more confident or just more stubborn or having some sort of unfounded self-belief, I've realized that asking why you feel that way is how you find out really where you might be wrong. And so we have a podcast at Voting Smarter too, and we've got, we just finished our second season, and the team that we had for our second season, it had somebody who worked for Joe Jorgensen, the Libertarian, for president. We had an Antifa supporter. We had several progressive people, some libertarians, and some right of center people. And I could still feel myself, trying to argue my position at times. But really asking why, okay, because I think that liberals and conservatives, they want a similar world. They both want to live in a place with a clean environment. They just disagree about how dirty it is and how it's getting dirty. They all want good quality education, but they disagree about some of the curriculum. They all want safe neighborhoods. They disagree a little bit about how you do that. But the truth is, I think understanding why someone thinks Antifa or a revolution is necessary is imperative to reaching them before they start one, and really understanding those. I look all the time. I follow Andrew Yang on Twitter, and all I see are people calling him, calling Republicans the devil or Democrats the devil on his Twitter feed. Now, hopefully they're bots, but because he'll post stuff like, "Oh yeah, just because someone is in the other political party doesn't mean they're a bad person," and that triggers people. And I think that asking people why they believe what they believe gives you the space to empathize. You don't have to agree with everybody, but you got to empathize with them. And so, I'm optimistic, and I'm optimistic because of my team, right? I've got all these young people from all over the country coming and grinding for me because they see the same things you guys see. They feel hopeless. I mean, young people, Gen Z, are the least likely to identify as a Republican or a Democrat in generations. And that's good, in my opinion. And so I think that I'm hopeful. I don't know if it's going to happen, if we run back 2016 or 2020 and 2024. That's going to be hard to move the ball forward. But I think a space where so the metaverse, the working title for our metaverse is civilly, right? And sounds kind of like Italy or Sicily, but it's the idea that we can completely disagree, and I want to hear why you think I'm wrong, because I want to know if I'm wrong. And the idea that civil society is built on discourse, but we can be civil about it, and we can have our acts of civil disobedience, and so that's our the working title for what our NFTs are civies, right? And we're hopeful that we can bring this sort of ethos to politics.
You said civil disobedience. You're going to have like sit-ins in the metaverse, like protest.
Well, you definitely, I imagine it happening. So what we imagine is having the main space would be like this really open courtyard, kind of like the Agora from ancient Greece. Again, everybody, I'm a nerd, but right. So the space between the Parthenon and it was basically the market of Athens is where Socrates and Plato and all those guys would jive about philosophy and politics. And it was basically the public square. So think of the public square with that duct tape down the middle, with some buildings, with like a space for like a TED Talk and a museum of all this, where you can go learn about lobbying and things like that, and a bar where you can really talk politics if you want. But then scattered everywhere are these boxes, right? Literal soapboxes that you can stand on. It increases your volume, and people can crowd around you and listen to what, let you, hey, the sky's falling, or hey, we should build a wall, or hey, abortion's a human right, whatever. And I could easily imagine people creating groups, their own parties or whatever, and having a sit-in at a virtual town hall for Rand Paul. Absolutely. And it would be much more civil, right? You can't burn you can't burn down a police precinct or storm the actual Capitol inside the metaverse.
So, Terry, the beauty of this idea is so grand and so far reaching that I think that I might want to try to summarize, and if you can redirect me in places where maybe I'm going to go out on a limb in a few places, and you let me know whether or not you feel like that's a appropriate summarization, or maybe redirect it. So we're coming to a position where we recognize that money is influence, influence is power. We all understand that collectively. And those of us who can control that because we have enough money and influence do, because that's our only choice. Those who can't either become disassociated from it all, they become numb, or they become disenfranchised and angry. And by introducing a simple concept like voting smarter, as in your mom's super PAC, a single mom super PAC, and you think of the concept that if lobbyists control who the politicians are, if big money, whatever form that is, controls who the politicians are, you can control who gets that money on an individual level every single day easily with the purchases that you make, then that does actually give you control, which should re-give you hope and actually allow you to, without having to change every other part of the system, still be able to influence it greatly. And finally, you had mentioned Gen Z's not identifying as political party. Perhaps Gen Z's are using DAOs and Web3 as a way for them to become the new political parties and the new religions, because many of them feel like perhaps one aspect of those or the other, they don't have that. And so they're trying to create their own communities around things that they believe in a way where they feel like they have power. So you already have a group of people that want to make a difference in whatever way that is, who are trying to find their way into Web3 and are figuring out different organisms and organizational structures, and in order for them to do it, that are sitting here waiting to have these kinds of conversations. They don't have a safe space for political conversation in the metaverse. So part one, voting smarter would allow them to have hope, make a difference with their purchase. Part two, the NFT purchases would allow them to have a safe space for which to have meaningful discussion about real politics. And inside of that, also even create more communal local groups like they're already trying to do and doing effectively in other places, maybe even create sub-DAOs around different things. So that way you can engage Gen Zers in the political process, because right now, if we don't, then in so many years, we might run out of runway to do so. Now, that said, take that, toss it up, throw it in the trash, turn it into something. What is your take on that summarization?
Yeah, I think I wish I wrote it down and put it in our deck.
Hey, luckily for you, it's recorded, and you'll be able to capture this for the rest of your life.
Perfect. No, you're right there, Corey. And what we see in our metaverse space, look, true metaverse adoption isn't going to happen in the earliest maybe somewhere in the next 2 to 10 years, where your mom's checking out the metaverse, right? And but young people are adopting it much quicker, and they feel more disaffected because they have less resources and they don't identify with one of these legacy parties. And so you're right on the money. What we also see in our metaverse is actually like taking that Chrome extension and actually making a metaverse shopping mall where you can walk down into the pro-gun or the anti-gun, or the different, you could find the brands that match your values.
No guns in the metaverse, I'm pretty sure. They're not going to let them.
No real ones.
Right.
No, Phil was just making a joke with you there.
Yeah.
I'm actually applying to be a metaverse sheriff. When it all gets fired up and there's enough people in there, then I want to be a sheriff in the metaverse. But I am going to ride a horse.
I mean, that is very Westworld to me,
Yes.
and I like it. Yeah, so we see the metaverse is actually a vehicle, not just for you to have conversations with each other, but it's a way for politicians to cut out the middlemen. Right? So one of our founding principles is what we call lowering the cost of voter acquisition. Right? So in the business space, it's all about customer acquisition cost, CAC. What does it cost you to get another customer? Right? So if you make $5 off a customer and it costs you $10 to get a customer, that's bad. And so in a midterm congressional election like right now, like when we did the math on 2018, it was $100 a voter is what they were spending.
Whoa.
Wow.
It's a lot of money. And so if we could give politicians direct access to their constituents through the metaverse, cutting out the middleman, and have a micro lobbying platform, right? So if we have our own coin inside our metaverse, right? That coin you'll be accruing. It's sort of like a learn to earn strategy that some of these educational metaverse have. Right, if you go learn about lobbying, if you participate in a town hall, if you ask a question in a town hall, if you stand on a soapbox and tell people how you feel and people upvote what you say, right, you get more coin. And you can use that coin to, buy swag or to improve your character or whatever. But you could also possibly, depending upon the legal side of this, is directly lobby those politicians.
Well, this sounds like a great idea, and you need a tagline, like a slogan. You got to vote so you're not broke. There it
Nice.
is.
Yeah. So, and
Dude,
Terry,
it all sounds so awesome.
It really
Thanks.
does. And I want to add something to that for people that kind of get lost in this whole metaverse thing. So the idea is that when we already spend a lot of time on our computers. It's essentially the metaverse. It's just like we don't feel like we're walking through it. We feel like we're staring at it. And as technology gets better and the ecosystems are there, of course we're going to look like we're in it more than we're looking at it. Now, that could be in the Agora. That could also be in Town Square with a pair of Apple glasses. Either one allows you to, and this is a beautiful thing about the metaverse or augmented reality, is that if you are looking at something, you can see more than one thing depending on what you want to see. Meaning that you can look at, okay, what I want to buy, but you can also see, like, you can choose, okay, I also want to see the kinds of people I might want to connect with. I can also see brands that represent my values, and I can make it to where basically certain things like brands that don't represent my values whenever I'm in the metaverse or in Times Square, like they're non-existent to me. Vice versa, the opposite can be true too. And it can be done very easily because there's like multiple layers to something, kind of like almost kind of turning your glasses to rose-colored glasses, if you will. You can kind of put the lens and see different
Corey,
filters.
you're saying like you can mute even that kind of stuff in Web3.
You could.
So it's sort of like that Roddy
becoming more
Piper
appealing
movie,
every
They
day.
Live. Or am I just too old and nobody gets that reference? Do you guys remember that? He put on these sunglasses and then he could see which people were actually aliens.
Oh, yeah, God, that's been a while. Yeah,
I love that movie.
yeah.
But yeah, no, so that's interesting. So if you take off the glass, this is an interesting. I'm just envisioning
looks
something.
through there.
You're in
He
Times
sees me,
Square, right?
brother.
There's all those screens everywhere. You take off your glasses and they're blank. You put on your glasses
gonna
and
look
they're
at me and see
tailored
me
your
through the
Google
mirror.
ads to you.
Precisely.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that's so. Yeah, I think technology's coming, and we don't have to be inside the metaverse to do some of what we're saying. We could do it in a Discord like this, right? We could have these conversations safely in a Web 2 as people get used to, and that's what we'll do. We'll be transitioning through Web 2 to Web 3. But I think the Web 3 ethos is one that collective action problems can actually be solved. That's what DAOs are doing every day. We want to buy the Constitution. Okay, let's try it. And a bunch of people got together through some change that almost got it.
Yeah, they raised like $50 million for that thing too, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So one suggestion that I might have with the metaverse, and I think there's going to have to be, I'm assuming that if you build a metaverse space, you're going to be able to lay criteria to enter, or is it just anybody who wants to come in? Because if you can, I think that we should have a space where everybody has to at least take on a human appearance, so that I don't have to stand on a soapbox and try to talk to someone that looks like a Pokemon character, right? That's going to be real hard for us to have a really deep intellectual conversation about stuff. You know, if you're portraying yourself to be Jabba the Hutt or whatever it is, that's going to be difficult. I didn't know you spoke it.
Yeah. I kind of only want to listen to Jabba the Hutt, so I don't know about you, Phil, but I'm probably only going to listen to that person talk.
So that's really interesting. What we would like to do, we see it as NFT gated, right? So the reason we're selling the NFTs is to build this community of holders to raise some money, but also with our Chrome extension, we're going to be rolling out a paid version and a free version. And so if you're an NFT holder, the paid version, you'll have way more questions or way more issues and layers to these issues in politics that we can't offer for free. And so holders of the NFT will have access for free to the paid version. And then same thing to the metaverse, right? So if you're a holder, you have access for whenever you want. We want everyone to sort of be verified, and we're still figuring out the logistics of this, so we can make sure they're in a specific political geographic constituency, right? So when the congressperson from my district is there to do a town hall, people from my district have preference to attend that event. So we want people to be verified on our end, but anonymous in the metaverse facing end, right? So you can change your name and what you look like. We weren't envisioning Pokemon though. We're actually envisioning people using their NFT as their avatar. So Abraham Lincoln with laser eyes.
I want that one.
Well, it doesn't. Let me ask you a question. Then I have to just bring up the obvious after you said that. Doesn't that create kind of an exclusive environment where people that couldn't afford an NFT, their opinion doesn't matter?
Well, I don't want to say their opinion doesn't matter, but absolutely it does create.
Well, if they can't say it, though, if they can't deliver their opinion, then it...
Correct. And so we would definitely want to... Now, look, we're looking at selling the first set of NFTs. It's not set yet, but at $25 a piece, which is still a lot of money to some people. So I don't want to poo-poo that. But once we raise money, I could easily... We're also going to sell issue-based NFTs, right? So where it's 50% of the cost of the NFT specifically go... Say you love guns, right? And so it'll go to organizations that support gun training, gun safety, and fighting, abridging your Second Amendment. And so... Or candidates that do the same. If we can come over the legal problems with making donations. So...
you could just call yourself a super PAC.
We could very well... PAC. We could very well create our own super PAC, but then we would no longer be a nonprofit Voting Smarter. So we would have to change our structure that way. Or Voting Smarter would have to be, pushed off as the foundation. We'd have to create a new entity that's a for-profit that runs the metaverse. And again, Corey will probably walk me through it being owned by a DAO and set it up that way. So
well, yeah, I mean that's kind of what would make sense, because it takes you out of those legal quandaries. And it's funny that the same people that you're trying to make an influence on, we have to juggle the rules that they've created. so that to even enter the space, right? All of these hoops that have to be jumped through to even have a box to even be able to set your soapbox up.
And again, I envision, say your local congressperson or even your city council people who want to have a debate in our metaverse space. I would see that there would also be event tickets you could purchase for $1, right, or so, like, some low cost amount, and so everyone who can prove that they're in that in that district or whatever can access it. We want as many people as possible in there. For now, the exclusivity is a function of the utility of the NFT and to build that first community, right? There's an essay by somebody in the startup space. I'm forgetting who it is. But it's right. You need like 1,000 true fans. And so, for now, it would get you guaranteed access to the metaverse. Let's put it that way.
Hey, I know now you have two. You have me and Corey for sure.
Hey.
I think anybody else in the chat could raise their hand too, but definitely have a fan here.
I'm stoked about that, and I want you to feel hopeful, Phil. I want you to feel like there's a way to change the system without trusting people you can't trust.
Yeah. I'm speaking very, very honestly. Like to me, this is the first thing in the voting scenario that has offered any hope. I hear politicians talking and just giving lip service, and it just doesn't compute, right? And this to me is a way that we can collectively make a change that we want. Brilliant.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And any help, any ideas, I'm always open. My door's open, this is a new thing. This is a new approach. And anytime you or anybody here in the foundation have ideas or want to make introductions,
hey,
just reach out.
I would get to the new junior congressmen that are going to be coming into all of the states, because it seems to me like the best thing to do is to get this kind of an idea planted inside of the head of people that are going into the space versus once they get in there. And speaking of, here in the 5th district of Florida, the great Shane Abbott won and is quite an impressive guy. And so I do see people coming up in the ranks that do have integrity and they do want change. And so man, this is such an awesome idea. And kudos for going through it, right? Speaking, Corey and myself have been, and the other guys involved and girls involved, we've been quite down quite a road of implementation into the DOI and the foundation. And we understand the amount of gumption that it takes, right, to jump out and say, no, this is something that I have to do, right? This is a burden on me that I must do this. And so congratulations for taking that leap of faith and really doing something to better all of our experiences, as it pertains at least to the American experience.
I appreciate that, Phil, very, very much. And there's times where all of us, we're all hard on ourselves at times, and running a startup is an emotional roller coaster. And so I really appreciate that. It's costly, right? Like if you want to build a startup, build it before you have a mortgage and you have 7-year-olds, but I have an amazing support system with my wife. I busted my for a long time and built up the sort of the war chest that is basically empty now, right? But to give this window for voting smarter. And I think that honestly, I've never been happier at work. I mean, I love teaching so much. All the kids have to laugh at your jokes. But it really is, especially during the downtime of the pandemic, it was really inspiring to see what these kids were doing. And afterwards, the kids were like, having this opportunity during this time really saved me from some really down times. And I didn't know, right? They came to work for me. They seemed awesome. They were, from these great universities. And then afterwards, the pandemic wanes and they get a job and they're just like, you have no idea where my mental health was. And,
Yeah.
I appreciate the recognition there. But I'm self-interested, right? It gives me joy to be doing this. And that's why I'm doing this. I believe in service. That's why I went into education instead of finance and making a bunch of money. But then I had this idea in 2008. Not for the NFT and the metaverse stuff, because that wasn't ready. But I had this idea in 2008, but I'm an economist, right? I know that 99% of all new businesses fail within the first 10 years, 95% in the first 5. And so I did the math. And it wasn't until the young people in my classes were like, dude, you're right. This is crazy. We got to fix this. I felt empowered enough to be like, you know what? And I'd worked long enough and amassed enough that we could cut back all of our expenditures to bare bones and take a risk. And so, I think that all of us can carve out, you don't have to leave your job to change the world. Right? All you have to do is a couple little things every day. Some of us are afforded the opportunity that we can take a bigger chunk of our day and do it. And we're doing it for all of us, for you too, for those of you who can't. My mom never could have done this. Right?
Well, and this action being put in place is going to give everybody a way, right? To make that change in a small way, in a way that everybody will be able to do.
Yep. Yeah, you vote with your dollars every day, right? Whether it's at Starbucks or Pete's Coffee, right? We've done a bunch of analysis on, comparing pizza places, car manufacturers, what hotels. So everything you're doing, because the truth is, goods are pretty homogeneous. They're pretty similar to one another. And even if they're not, shopping at Walmart versus Target, you have two very different political impacts buying the same products.
Oh, you have two very different experiences too. Down here we call it
that's
Target.
True. That's true. It's fancy. But if you're doing it online, it's the same.
Yeah. So I have a question. Without disclosing, maybe you want to, but as you were doing research, who was the largest corporate contributor? Whether or not you name who they contributed to, who was the largest contributor?
Amazon.
Interesting.
Wow.
And they were also the most pro-military major brand. Most major brands are center left, and a few of them are right leaning. But most major brands donate to incumbents because they're already winning, right? These major brands have already won the game, and so they just want to keep the machine going. But Amazon, I don't know if you guys know how Amazon makes money. Amazon does not make money sending you all those BS boxes that we all get. They're starting to now, but Amazon makes money on the cloud.
Yeah, data storage.
And they do all the clouds for the DIA, the CIA, the NSA, the Department of Defense. They have the government. AWS is how Amazon makes money, and they do it through government contracts. And so they're very pro military budget.
Interesting.
Because that's what pays them. And that makes sense for them. Again, I'm not judging them. If you're pro military, yay. If you're, anti-military, boo. No, it's not like that at all. It's just that's what's interest of their shareholders and their bottom line. You expect them to do what's legal.
Such an interesting fact, though, right? I would not, Corey, was that something that caught you back to, that they would be maybe not that they were, I don't know, even that they're the largest contributor?
Now, that was direct donations to candidates. That wasn't PACs, and that was to candidates running for national office that we have data on. So what we do is we interact the FEC open secrets data with the candidate data that we collected. We're now...
Have you found the candidates to be generally open to or cooperative with giving that kind of information out?
They're legally required to report it to the FEC. So the dark money, no, that's just a dark hole that we can't get into yet. And well, I mean, I hope somebody hacks their way in, right, and figures that out. One of my classmates in grad school had this really interesting idea. You get rid of the max donation limits, but all the money goes to an escrow account and is held for a certain period that's randomized, and then the distributions are chopped up into randomized amounts. And so you try and disconnect the candidate from the donation, right? So if you're just donating to Bernie Sanders because you agree with him, then it doesn't matter if he knows that it came from you. And so it's an interesting idea, right? And I mean, what would I be doing? I'd be calling these guys and be like, look, I just dropped $1 million into your account. It'll be there in the next couple of weeks. When I didn't, you know what I mean? Like, you can't prove it. So I would have bought all the politicians I need without spending $1.
I hope not.
Rhetorically.
I hope not. You're going to go to federal prison for lying to a congressman.
Ooh, I won't do it under oath in a hearing. But I think that's another thing. If federal law enforcement can lie to me about having found, evidence in my house, I should be able to lie to them about whatever I want. But I think I kind of like that idea. Again, if we can lower the cost of access, it won't matter.
Well,
and you know what we haven't talked about at all, sorry, Corey, is lobbying itself. There's this whole other dirty side of where companies are basically wining and dining politicians, spending money on their campaigns or spending money on staff or spending on all this money, lobbying, getting FaceTime with politicians. What we envision is, let's say we blew up to like the Constitution down, we raised $50 million. We want to have what's called office hours in the metaverse. So it's not you vote yes on HR 17 because I want to make money. It's no, you spend this many hours in the metaverse with your constituents, you get this much money.
Yeah, I feel like that could be done well through DAOs too.
Yeah.
Yes, 100% through DAOs. And so just sort of cutting out the big corporations and the big donors. If you look at Google Sheldon Adelson and Google George Soros and look at the amount of money they've given, one on the right, one on the left. And they've been the decider in several elections. The amount of money Soros spent on prosecutor elections throughout the United States is immense. The amount of money Adelson spent on elections, right, to get people who would support Supreme Court nominees that would overturn Roe. Again, I'm not advocating either of those positions, right? The no cash bail or banning abortion, but there are a couple really rich people who had a way larger say than you did at the ballot box on those two things.
Well, here at the Doi Foundation, we are a big fan of the idea of a lobby DAO that is run by the people. And so that sounds a little bit like what you're talking about. And, that is something that will get some legs on it.
Yeah. Well, we would love to participate or be the engine that sort of does that through our, we'd love to talk more about that.
Well, that's perfect because we don't actually want to build it. We just want to inspire somebody to build it.
Yeah. We'll talk a lot, though, if you want help.
Back to that whole startup being a lot of work.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, Terry, speaking of talking about that, there's just so many things to talk about here. It's so powerful.
I think we're going to have a round two, Corey.
I feel like we are. We're already 15 minutes over, and I feel like we haven't even cracked into this a bit.
I agree.
As much as we should. But in summarization, for those of you who are listening to this podcast, Terry Crandell from Voting Smarter, this is just an amazing project, the ability to bring hope back into people where they can vote with their dollar, to actually feel like they have an impact, a place, and then to be able to use the NFT sales that are coming out in October, to be able to build a metaverse that's a safe space, have political discourse, so we can actually feel like we're taking politics back. And there's so many reasons why politicians will want this too. And I'm going to just leave this as like a little bit of a teaser in my mind. I feel like the reason why tons and tons of money is going to come into this from politicians is because at the end of the day, we talked about that $100 a vote voter acquisition. This entire model can flip that to 10% or 5% or 2% of that cost. And there's plenty of reasons why they'd want to support that whole proof of location, and to do that anonymously, and to add send you a little something in the mail, and so on and so forth. They'll just
Corey, basically what you're saying is offer the incentive and they'll come.
Exactly.
All about incentives.
It's all about incentives. And, if you guys feel incentivized to help, go to votingsmarter.org. You can find us on Instagram at Voting Smarter, at Twitter at Voting Smarter. If you want to get crazy and join the team, send us a message. You can send me a DM here. You can, if you want to donate, there's a donate button on our website. And if you want to find out more about the NFTs, you can sign up for our mailing list. But definitely follow Twitter if you want updates on that. We're going to need everybody's multiplicative effect, right? We have our own collective action problem of finding enough people to be those first 1,000 passionate, users. And I thanks for listening to us talk about this, and go vote with your dollar, shop your values.
Yeah, and
go to the Chrome store.
This is going to be put out as a podcast on pretty much every platform. We'll get it up on YouTube, but part of what we will do here at the foundation is championing and celebrating projects that like yourself, right, that bring freedom and liberation to people, and then are quality projects to get involved with. So you're definitely going to pick up some cheerleaders here. I don't wear a cheerleading outfit though. So
on a horse?
Well, that could be very distasteful.
Okay. Well, you better for the horse.
For the horse,
or for anybody that sees me going by.
That's fair. That's fair.
I don't know if you saw, Phil, before you close it out. B-Man J made you your very own sheriff NFT, so you're going to have to use that
fantastic.
as. Yeah, I'm going to have to use that in the metaverse.
Changing all my profile pictures, Jay.
That's awesome.
Is that a piece of straw, or is that a plastic straw, I hope, hanging out of my mouth? Don't put no damn paper straw in my mouth. I can't do it. I can't do it.
What if it's wrapped in plastic, Phil?
Well, you have to wrap a paper straw in plastic. Imagine if you just threw a bunch of paper straws wrapped in paper in a box and tried to ship them out. One little bit of moisture, all ruined.
Yep. Yeah, you can't do that in Florida.
No.
Nope.
Well, Terry, we sure do appreciate you coming in. And Corey, I won't even ask you if you have any more questions, because I know that you've got a notepad full of them. I have a notepad full of them. And if I have a notepad, Corey's already flipped the page. So we definitely are going to want to bring you back in. It was I thought it was a riveting conversation, and it really is hopeful. And what we want to bring people is hope, right? Because this is our situation is not desperate. We don't have to listen to quote unquote the powers that be, whoever they are that you're hearing tell you that your situation is desperate and you can't do anything about it and you're powerless. Indeed, you are powerful, and together we are ultra powerful. So thank you for coming in, and we're going to wrap it up right there. Gang, hope you can get with us tomorrow morning. I know this is a short back-to-back, but we're going to be in here at 8 a.m. with Dow HQ. And this is going to be also, that's Dow headquarters, and we're going to be in here tomorrow at 8 a.m., and I hope that you come back and check in with us. So for myself... Yeah, Corey, you want to add something into that?
I actually do, because interestingly enough, one more thing is that Dow HQ is a one-stop shop to find, invest, and vote in extraordinary DAOs. There's nothing like it anywhere else. And if you care about DAOs, that's the place to go. Part one. Part two, Lucas is actually how we know Terry. So Lucas from Dow HQ. Oh, we got connected, Terry and I.
Well, look at that. What a tie-in. We'll have to tell Lucas thank you.
Well, thank you
will.
guys very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It was really awesome. So, for myself, Phil Ward, for Terry, and for Corey Fico, we invite you guys to be kind to somebody. It will change your life and change theirs. So, until tomorrow morning, everybody take care.
Thanks for listening to the Doi Podcast. If you've enjoyed our time together, please rate and review the podcast. Together, we can achieve a brighter future. Help us bring this information to the world by sharing it with friends and family. The Doi Coin, the crypto coin for the people, by the people.